The moment life feels completely pointless is not the moment something has gone wrong. It is the moment something has finally gone right. Because that feeling, the numbness, the why bother, the looking at things that used to matter and feeling nothing, that is not a breakdown. It is a signal. And if you learn to read it, it changes everything. In this video, I'll show you. Number one, why feeling pointless is a precise psychological signal, not a malfunction, and what it is actually pointing at. Number two, the Vedic concept that names exactly what you're feeling and why Western frameworks keep missing it. Number three, a three-step daily reset protocol rooted in that same tradition that pulls you out of numbness without toxic positivity or forcing motivation you do not have. Let's get into it. A few years ago, I spoke with a man I'll call David, mid-30s, successful by every external measure, had done therapy, read the books, tried the journaling. He told me, you truly don't care when you look at the small things that used to make you feel alive and just feel numb. He wasn't depressed in the clinical sense. He wasn't suicidal. He was just, in his words, offline, like someone had pulled the plug on whatever made life feel real. What David didn't know, and what I want to show you today, is that he wasn't broken. He was standing at a threshold that has a name, a cause, and a way through. Arjuna was one of the greatest warriors in recorded history. At the start of the Bhagavad Gita, he rides his chariot to the center of a battlefield, looks out at the two armies, and collapses, not from fear, from something much harder to name. He tells Krishna, I do not know what to do. My limbs fail. My mouth is dry. Nothing seems worth fighting for. He drops his bow. He sits down in the middle of a war. For centuries, people read that scene as weakness. But Krishna does not treat it as weakness. He treats it as the beginning of the real conversation. The reason that scene has survived 3,000 years is because almost every human being hits a version of it. You're going through the motions. You're doing what you're supposed to do. And one day, you look up and the question arrives, what is any of this actually for? Western psychology tends to label that moment as depression or burnout or existential crisis. Those labels are not wrong, but they are incomplete. They describe the symptom without naming the cause. And when you treat a symptom without knowing the cause, you get temporary relief at best. The Gita's framework says something more precise. It says that feeling is what happens when the self you are performing every day has drifted away from the self you actually are. Not your personality, not your history, your swadharma, which translates roughly as your specific individual signal system for what you are here to do. Think of it this way. Your phone has GPS. If you're driving in the wrong direction, the GPS does not go silent. It recalculates. The feeling of pointlessness is your internal GPS recalculating. It is not telling you that nothing matters. It is telling you that what you have been doing doesn't match where you're supposed to go. Research from Dacey and Ryan's self-determination theory backs this up. When people consistently act in ways that are disconnected from their core values and intrinsic motivations, they develop what the researchers call a motivation, not laziness, not weakness, a genuine shutdown of the drive system. The brain stops producing the internal reward signal because it has learned that the actions being taken are not leading anywhere that matters to the organism. So, the takeaway from this section is this: stop treating the feeling as the enemy. It is information. The question is not, how do I make this feeling go away? The question is, what is this feeling pointing at? Most people who feel like life has lost its point are not depressed in the clinical sense. They are not in crisis in the acute sense. They are in a state the Vedic tradition calls tamas. Tamas is one of three fundamental qualities called gunas that the Gita says govern all of nature and all of human experience. The three are rajas, which is energy, drive, and activity; sattva, which is clarity, balance, and wisdom; and tamas, which is heaviness, inertia, and darkness. Now, here is what makes tamas different from depression as Western medicine defines it. Depression is typically framed as a pathology, something wrong with the brain's chemistry that needs to be corrected. Tamas is framed as a natural state, one of three states that every human being cycles through that becomes a problem only when it gets stuck. And the reason this distinction matters is that it changes what you do about it. If you believe you are depressed, you look for a cure. You look for something to fix the broken part. If you understand you are in tamas, you look for the specific kind of energy that moves you out of it. And those are very different searches. Neuroscience has started to describe tamas without using the word. The default mode network is the part of your brain that activates when you are not engaged with a task. It is the network responsible for rumination, self referential thinking, and the kind of looping mental activity that makes you feel like you're stuck inside your own head. When tamas is dominant, the default mode network tends to be overactive. You're not thinking clearly, you're not acting, you're just circling. Low dopamine baseline is another piece of it. Not the dramatic dopamine crash of addiction, but a chronic low level flatness where nothing feels rewarding enough to pursue. That is the I honestly just wish I could go to sleep someday and never wake up feeling that so many people describe. Not wanting to die, exactly, just wanting the flatness to stop. Here is what the Gita adds that neuroscience alone cannot give you. It says tamas is not random. It is not just a chemical accident. It tends to arise when a person is living out of alignment with their swadharma, their authentic direction, the soul, if you want to use that language, or the deep self, if you prefer the secular version, generates tamas as a kind of forced stop. It is the system shutting down so that something more honest can emerge. Krishna does not tell Arjuna to push through the feeling. He does not say, just keep going. He sits with him in the middle of the battlefield and starts asking questions. Who are you really? What actually matters? What are you here to do? Those are not therapy questions. They are navigation questions, and they only become available when the noise of ordinary life gets quiet enough to hear them. Tamas paradoxically creates that quiet. The takeaway: numbness and pointlessness are not signs that something is permanently wrong with you. They are signs that the state you are in, tamas, is calling for a specific kind of response, not more willpower, not more productivity, a different kind of activation entirely. This is the part most content in this space skips entirely. They name the problem, give you a philosophical reframe, and leave you with find your purpose. That is like telling someone who is lost in a forest to head north. Technically correct, completely useless without a compass. The Gita's prescription for tamas is not a mindset shift. It is a sequence of physical, relational, and contemplative practices that progressively move you through rajas, which is activated energy, into sattva, which is clear, purposeful calm. You cannot jump from tamas to sattva. You have to move through rajas first. That is the sequence. Step one is breath and movement, and it has to come first. Not because it is the most important, but because tamas is a body state before it is a mind state. When the default mode network is overactive and dopamine is flat, thinking your way out does not work. The body has to move first. The specific practice the tradition recommends is what we would now call rajas activation, short, intense breath work, kapalabhati, or simple forceful nasal breathing for 2 to 3 minutes, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of vigorous physical movement, not a gentle walk, something that raises your heart rate and requires your attention. This is not about fitness, it is about interrupting the neurological pattern of tamas by forcing the nervous system into a different state. Modern research on exercise and the default mode network confirms this. Even a single bout of moderate to vigorous exercise measurably reduces default mode network overactivation for several hours afterward. You are not fixing the underlying misalignment yet. You are creating the neurological conditions under which you can actually think clearly enough to do that work. Step two is seva, which means service or contribution. And this is the one most people skip because it feels counterintuitive when you are in tamas. When everything feels pointless, the last thing you want to do is give energy to someone else. But the Gita is very specific about this. Arjuna's crisis is partly caused by his complete focus on his own suffering. Krishna's first move is to redirect his attention outward. This maps directly onto what Detsy and Ryan's research calls relatedness, one of the three core psychological needs that drive intrinsic motivation. When relatedness is absent, a motivation follows. When it is present, the drive system reactivates. Seva does not have to be grand. It can be making a meal for someone, helping a neighbor, showing up for a friend who is struggling. The act of contributing to something outside yourself is one of the fastest known ways to interrupt the self referential loop of tamas. If you're in the place where, as some people describe it, the only thing I stay for is so nobody else has to grieve, that feeling of responsibility for others is not a burden. It is actually your rajas trying to activate. It is the system pointing toward connection as the doorway out. Step 3 is what the tradition calls svadhyaya, self study, but not the journaling kind where you catalog your feelings. This is the practice of asking the navigation questions that Krishna poses to Arjuna, not why do I feel this way, which is a tamas question that loops back on itself, but what does this feeling tell me about what I'm supposed to be moving toward? Concretely, take the area of your life where the pointlessness is loudest, your work, your relationships, your daily routine. Ask one question about it. If I were not afraid of wasting my effort, what would I actually try? Not what should I do? What would I try? That question bypasses the perfectionism and the fear of failure that Tamas uses to keep you frozen. Arjuna does not leave the battlefield. That is the part of the Gita people miss. After his conversation with Krishna, he picks up his bow, not because Krishna gave him a perfect answer to the meaning of life, but because the conversation moved him from tamas through rajas into enough sattva to see clearly what was in front of him and what his next right action was. You do not need to solve meaning, you need to find your next right action. The 3 steps give you that. Activate the body first, redirect attention outward. Second, ask the navigation question third. That navigation question, what would I actually try if I were not afraid of wasting my effort? Sounds simple, but for most people, it surfaces something they have been avoiding for a long time. And that is where a conversation becomes more useful than a video. If you have already tried the self help approach, the journaling, the therapy, the mindset work, and you still feel like something is fundamentally misaligned, the fastest way through that is not another framework. It is someone sitting with you in it and helping you see what you cannot see from inside it. That is what the free consultation call at dailymandraset.com consultation is for. It is 30 minutes, no pitch, completely personal to your situation. You will walk away from that call knowing the exact next step for where you are right now, whether we ever work together again or not. The link is in the description. If this kind of thinking is useful to you, subscribe because this is what every video on this channel is built to do. Tell me in the comments what area of your life is the pointlessness loudest right now, work, relationships, or something else.